What if I told you that there exists a book hidden from the gaze of the world, a book whispered about in secret circles, a book that claims to reveal what happens after we die? For centuries, humanity has looked to the stars, to temples, to the words of prophets and sages, asking the same question: what awaits us beyond the final breath? Religions offer promises, science offers silence, and philosophy offers riddles. Yet, within the forgotten pages of an ancient manuscript lies a narrative that dares to lift the veil. Imagine this: the answers you've sought about the afterlife were never entirely lost, they were buried. Not destroyed, not erased, but buried under dust, superstition, and neglect. This book, obscure yet astonishing, speaks not in parables meant to control, but in revelations meant to awaken. It does not merely describe heaven or hell, it maps the passage of the soul. It details the journey, the crossing, the trials, the transformations, offering a vision that is neither bound by dogma nor dismissed by skepticism. Why has no one told you this before? Perhaps because truth, in its raw form, is dangerous. A society built on fear of the unknown cannot afford to let you see beyond it. If you knew with certainty that death was not the end, but a continuation, a passage, a metamorphosis, would you still be so easily manipulated by fear? Would you not begin to live differently, fearlessly, with a fire in your spirit that no chain could contain? In this video, we will unravel the mystery of this forgotten text. We will explore its origins, its teachings, and its hidden wisdom. We will peel back the layers of myth and distortion to uncover what it truly says about the soul's journey beyond the grave. But be warned, once you hear these words, you may never look at life or death the same way again. Because this is not just a story about what happens when the body falls silent. This is a revelation about who you truly are and why your journey doesn't end, but transforms. To understand the power of this forgotten book, we must first step back into the currents of history, into an age when wisdom was not confined to libraries or reduced to theories, but lived and breathed as part of human destiny. Ancient civilizations, from the banks of the Nile to the peaks of the Himalayas, held one belief in common: death was not an ending, but a passage. In Egypt, priests guarded the Book of the Dead, a collection of sacred spells designed to guide the departed through the perilous journey of the afterlife. The Tibetans, centuries later, would preserve a similar vision in the Bardo Thodol, known today as the Tibetan Book of the Dead, a manual for navigating states of consciousness after death. Even the Greeks spoke of the mysteries of Eleusis, secret rites that promised initiates a glimpse of what awaited beyond the grave. But the book we speak of today is different. It does not come to us from the mainstream currents of religion, but from the margins, from sects branded as heretical, from sages whose words were silenced, from scrolls hidden away in caves and sealed tombs. Some scholars whisper that fragments of it may have been preserved in Gnostic texts buried in the sands of Nag Hammadi, writings that paint death not as judgment, but as liberation from illusion. Others suggest it was a synthesis, a lost codex written by mystics who traveled from one land to another, weaving together Egyptian, Persian, and early Christian visions of the soul's passage. What made this book so threatening? It was not merely its descriptions of what lies beyond. It was its insistence that the afterlife was not reserved for the chosen, nor dictated by priests, but governed by the awakening of the individual soul. According to its passages, the after-death journey is a mirror. Every fear, every attachment, every desire we fail to release in life becomes the landscape we must face in death. In this sense, heaven and hell are not places, but states of consciousness carried across the threshold. This teaching was radical. It stripped away the power of external authority and returned it to the seeker. Imagine a society where the afterlife was no longer a mystery controlled by dogma, but a path revealed through inner knowledge. It would free humanity from fear, and fear, as history shows, has always been the most effective form of control. Over centuries, this wisdom was forgotten, not because it was untrue, but because it was too liberating. Empires rose and fell, religions codified their doctrines, and anything that contradicted them was branded as heresy, burned, or buried. The book survived only in whispers, fragments, and the memories of those who guarded its secrets. And yet, fragments endure. From the Hermetic teachings of Alexandria to the mystic poetry of Rumi, from the visions of medieval alchemists to the echoes in modern near-death experiences, we see traces of its wisdom scattered like constellations across time. The question is not whether this knowledge existed, but whether we are ready to receive it again. Because once we begin to read its language, not with the eyes but with the soul, it becomes clear. This book is not just about death. It is about awakening to life itself. The Forgotten Book begins with a startling claim. Death is not the great unknown. It is the great unveiling. What we call death, it suggests, is not the extinguishing of life, but the peeling away of illusion. The body falls silent, the senses withdraw, but the essence, the consciousness, remains, carrying with it the impressions, fears, and truths accumulated during a lifetime. To illustrate this, the text uses imagery both poetic and haunting. It describes the moment of departure as standing before a mirror made not of glass, but of light. In this mirror, the soul does not see a reflection of its physical form, but of its inner state. All that was hidden in life, the suppressed emotions, the unspoken desires, the unhealed wounds, emerge with striking clarity. There is no judgment imposed from outside, no deity weighing scales. The soul itself becomes its own witness. This first stage, often referred to in the text as the threshold of recognition, is both liberating and terrifying. Liberation, because nothing can be concealed. Terror, because most of us spend our lives hiding from ourselves. The book insists that the pain many experience in death is not punishment, but confrontation, the unavoidable meeting with what we refuse to face in life. But here lies the secret that makes this knowledge so extraordinary. The book does not stop at confrontation. It reveals that death is also opportunity. Each stage of the afterlife journey is not fixed, but fluid, shaped by awareness. The soul that recognizes its illusions as illusions passes through them like mist. The soul that clings to them, however, becomes ensnared, reliving the fears and attachments of earthly life in distorted, dreamlike realms. To bring this down to earth, consider the way dreams operate. In dreams, when we do not realize we are dreaming, we are at the mercy of whatever images appear. But the moment we become lucid, we can reshape the dream, transform monsters into guides, darkness into light. The book suggests the same of death. Awareness is the key that turns torment into liberation, confusion into clarity. And here is where the text departs from both dogma and denial. It does not describe heaven as a reward for the righteous, nor hell as a prison for the wicked. Instead, it presents both as states of consciousness. A person who has cultivated compassion, wisdom, and inner clarity in life naturally experiences radiant states after death. One who lived bound to fear, greed, or cruelty finds themselves wandering in shadowy landscapes of their own making. In both cases, the geography is internal. This teaching holds a mirror to our daily lives. For if death reveals our true state of being, then how we live now, moment by moment, becomes the rehearsal for what awaits us. The book warns, you cannot fake awareness. You cannot mask fear with rituals or bribes to the divine. What you are, deeply and honestly, is what you carry across the threshold. Yet, in this truth lies tremendous empowerment. For the book also declares that preparation is always possible. Every act of self-reflection, every step of healing, every moment of awakening is like packing provisions for the journey. To awaken now is to travel lightly, unburdened, ready to pass through the thresholds without fear. Thus, core teaching one emerges. Death does not change us, it reveals us. The real work begins not at the moment of dying, but in the living. And the Forgotten Book insists, if we learn to awaken here, in this world of shadows, then the passage beyond will not be a terror to endure, but a revelation to embrace. If the first teaching of the Forgotten Book is that death reveals who we truly are, the second is even more unsettling. Death is not one event. It is a series of passages. The book describes these passages as veils, layers of reality that the soul must cross after leaving the body. Each veil tests the soul, not with fire and torment, but with recognition and surrender. The first veil is the world of memory. Here, the soul relives its life, not as a linear story, but as a living tapestry of choices and consequences. Every action ripples outward, and the soul experiences those ripples in full. If you caused joy, you feel that joy echo through you. If you caused suffering, you feel that too. This is not divine punishment, it is resonance. The book calls it the echo of being. The second veil is desire. Stripped of the body, the soul still carries the longings and attachments it held in life. Those who were enslaved by wealth may wander through visions of endless treasure they cannot touch. Those bound by lust may be trapped in shadows of longing without fulfillment. Yet, those who recognize these visions as empty phantoms pass through unscathed. Awareness, once again, is the key. The third veil is perhaps the most mysterious, the confrontation with the self. Here, the soul encounters a figure that seems both familiar and alien, a radiant double, or in some traditions, a terrifying shadow. The book describes it as the guardian of the threshold. This being is not an external judge, but the soul's higher essence, the part of us we ignored or suppressed in life. To unite with it is liberation. To flee from it is to fall back into cycles of confusion. What is striking about these teachings is their paradox. The book insists that the afterlife is real, yet it also insists that it is dreamlike. Real, because the soul continues beyond the body. Dreamlike, because the landscapes encountered are shaped by our own consciousness. The soul is both the traveler and the terrain. Here we must pause and consider how radical this vision is compared to the stories we've been told. In many traditions, the afterlife is depicted as a final judgment, a one-time sorting into eternal reward or punishment. The Forgotten Book dismantles this idea entirely. Instead, it portrays the afterlife as a continuation of growth, a journey of purification and awakening. The soul is not condemned forever. It is given opportunities, veils to cross, lessons to learn. The only true prison is ignorance, and the only true liberation is awareness. Of course, such teachings were bound to clash with dogmatic systems that thrived on fear. If death is not the final courtroom of a wrathful God, but a mirror of our own consciousness, then who needs the gatekeepers of salvation? This is precisely why the book faded into obscurity, preserved only in fragments and whispers. Its vision was too empowering, too direct. It gave power back to the individual. But perhaps the most intriguing part of the book lies in what it hints at, but never fully explains: the fourth veil. The text speaks of it in riddles, describing it as the ocean without shore and the silence before the beginning. Some interpret this as the merging of the individual soul with the infinite, what mystics might call union with the divine or enlightenment. Others suggest it is the passage into rebirth, where the soul chooses, or is drawn into another body, another life, another chance to awaken. The ambiguity is deliberate. The book does not spoon-feed answers. It leaves space for mystery, for wonder, for the recognition that ultimate truth cannot be contained in words. This too is its wisdom. For just as death is a passage, so too is knowledge, a doorway that must be walked through, not simply explained. Thus, core teaching 2 emerges. Death is a journey through veils, and each veil is shaped by the consciousness we bring to it. Beyond fear, beyond dogma, the afterlife is revealed as a path of awakening, one step closer to remembering who we truly are. The Forgotten Book is not merely a record of what happens after death. It is a manual for how to live. Its message is clear. The way you prepare for death is by how you awaken in life. This means that every choice, every habit of mind, every moment of awareness or distraction becomes part of the soul's luggage for the journey. So how do we prepare? The book offers guidance in the form of practices, not elaborate rituals requiring temples or priests, but inner disciplines meant to cultivate awareness. The first practice is self-reflection. The book urges us to spend time each day in honest examination, asking, what fears am I carrying? What attachments rule me? Where have I denied my own truth? This is not about guilt or shame. It is about clarity. Just as the soul must face the mirror of light after death, so too can we practice facing that mirror now. Journaling, meditation, or simply sitting in silence with one's thoughts can begin this process. The second practice is detachment from illusion. The book does not condemn desire outright. It warns against mistaking shadows for reality. It suggests exercises such as visualizing your possessions, your titles, even your body dissolving into dust, while asking, if all this were gone, what would remain of me? This is not morbid. It is liberating. For the more lightly we hold the temporary, the more freely we can cross the veils when they come. The third practice is cultivating awareness in dreams. The text draws a direct parallel between dreaming and dying. Both are states in which the mind creates worlds that feel real until recognition dawns. Thus, becoming lucid in dreams, realizing we are dreaming while still inside the dream, is seen as training for death. By practicing mindfulness in sleep, we sharpen the skill of awareness that will serve us in the afterlife. The fourth practice is acts of compassion and truth. The book teaches that the resonance of our actions follows us beyond the body. Every act of kindness, every word of truth, every step toward healing ourselves and others is like a torch we carry into the darkness. These are not symbolic, they shape the landscapes we will encounter. The more light we create now, the more light we will walk in later. Finally, the text warns of common pitfalls. One is complacency, believing that religious rituals or borrowed beliefs will substitute for genuine awakening. Another is fear, clinging to life so tightly that death becomes a terror. And perhaps the greatest is distraction, the endless pursuit of pleasure, wealth, or status, which numbs us to the deeper call of the soul. Yet, the forgotten book is not stern or condemning. Its message is profoundly hopeful. It is never too late. Whether you are young or old, broken or whole, every step toward awareness matters. Every breath of mindfulness, every act of courage, every moment of authenticity reshapes the soul's path. In this way, the book transforms death from something to dread into something to prepare for, not with fear, but with reverence. And when we live in this way, something extraordinary happens. Life itself becomes richer. Colors seem more vivid, relationships more sacred, choices more meaningful. For to live with the awareness of death is not to be haunted by it, but to be illuminated by it. So what does this forgotten book truly reveal? Not a dogma, not a final answer carved in stone, but a living truth. Death is not the end, but the unveiling of who we are. It is the mirror that strips away illusion, the journey through veils shaped by our consciousness, the ultimate rehearsal for which life itself has always been the stage. We have seen how ancient traditions whispered of this knowledge in fragments, the Egyptians, the Tibetans, the Gnostics, all hinting at the same secret, that the afterlife is not a courtroom, but a continuation, a passage of awakening. And yet, over centuries, fear and control buried this wisdom. The book survived not to frighten us, but to remind us of our freedom. And here is the question it leaves burning within us. If death reveals what we truly are, then who are we becoming right now? Are we preparing ourselves to cross the veils lightly, with clarity and courage? Or are we weaving chains of attachment and fear that will bind us in the next passage? The beauty of this teaching is that the answer does not lie in some distant afterlife. It lies in the choices we make today. In every moment of honesty, every act of compassion, every breath of awareness, we are shaping not just our lives, but our deaths, and therefore our eternity. Perhaps the most haunting yet liberating truth of the forgotten book is this: awakening is always possible. No soul is ever lost. Every veil is another chance. Every passage is another invitation. And if we begin now, if we dare to live as though death were not the end, but the unveiling, then when the final breath comes, we will not meet it with fear, but with recognition. So I leave you with this. What if death is not something to dread, but something to prepare for as the most profound adventure of all? And if that is true, how will you live, knowing that every step is already shaping the journey beyond? If this exploration has stirred something within you, I invite you to reflect, to share your thoughts below, and to join me in uncovering more hidden wisdom that has been waiting, perhaps for you, to remember.